Good Tuesday morning, my fellow high seas cruisers. Chris here, and welcome to today's video. Yesterday was just full of itinerary changes as the hurricane continues to move through the Caribbean, heading towards Mexico. Well, as expected, it has resulted in a lot of itinerary changes across all of the cruise lines. We have itinerary changes from Carnival Cruise Lines, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian Cruise Lines, and Celebrity Cruise Lines. And depending on what the storm does, of course, we could have more. Now, one thing to remember, and we say it every time we talk about storms, is the cruise lines are always going to do what is safest for the ship, the crew, the passengers on board. They're going to do their absolute best to avoid anything that puts the ship's safety at risk. That will mean itinerary changes, port changes, port cancellations, and each of those depends on the ship and depends on the itinerary. Sometimes canceling a port simply means there's no other port in the area that they could go to, which would result in another sea day. That's just something to always keep in mind for cruisers that cruise during hurricane season, because just like we're about to show you, changes do happen. Now, starting off, we have the Carnival Liberty sailing out of New Orleans. And the Carnival Liberty is not changing her ports, but she's going to be doing them in a reverse order. Originally scheduled to do Roatan, Belize, and then Cozumel, well, the order is going to be reversed, and they will do Cozumel, Belize, and then Roatan. We have two itinerary changes from Norwegian Cruise Line, starting with the Norwegian Jade sailing out of Port Canaveral. Originally scheduled to do a Western Caribbean cruise, they will now be doing an Eastern Caribbean cruise. So the ports in Jamaica, Grand Caymans, and Cozumel, those were canceled and are being replaced with San Juan, Puerto Rico, Tortola, and Puerto Plata. And the Norwegian Breakaway, sailing out of Miami, also scheduled for a Western Caribbean cruise, is also switching to an Eastern Caribbean cruise. Originally scheduled for Cozumel, Costa Maya, Belize, and Roatan, they will be switching to Puerto Plata, St. Thomas, and Tortola. We have three changes from Royal Caribbean: Icon of the Seas, Harmony of the Seas, and the Wonder of the Seas have all had itinerary changes. Starting with Icon of the Seas, which I guess kind of a reversal from some of the other cruise lines, was scheduled to do an Eastern Caribbean cruise and will now be switching to a Western Caribbean cruise. Originally scheduled to visit St. Thomas and St. Martin, they're going to switch it up now and do Cozumel and Costa Maya instead. Wonder of the Seas will be canceling two of her port stops. She's going to be canceling Roatan, Honduras, and Costa Maya, Mexico. Now, she will still visit Cozumel, Mexico, and will have Nassau, Bahamas added as she returns back to Port Canaveral. Harmony of the Seas sailing out of Galveston, Texas. Well, she has canceled her port stop, which will be replaced by a sea day and will arrive in Costa Maya and Cozumel, Mexico earlier than originally scheduled. And finally, the Celebrity Beyond, doing cruises to the ABC Islands. Well, she's still going to visit all of her port stops, but again, she is going to do them in a reverse order. Now, these are just the current itinerary changes that we have. Whatever the storm does, if it changes direction, picks up speed, slows down, dissipates altogether, can of course affect itineraries going forward. We could still have more itinerary changes. We could still have more ports being canceled. We could have cruise ships rerouted to other parts of the Caribbean. And it's all going to depend on what the storm does. And a lot of these changes are last minute changes. Remember, cruise lines, while they do their best to kind of figure out what the weather is doing, it's not like they have a crystal ball that they rub it in their office and say, okay, next Tuesday, we are going to have this kind of weather. We better do something about it now. A lot of these changes kind of come on the fly as the weather is happening. So especially for new cruisers going on your first cruise during hurricane season, this type of thing does and can happen. Now, for all of the guests across the cruise lines that had excursions booked at ports that have been moved to different days, canceled, whatever the case may be, the cruise lines, of course, will refund those excursion prices back to you if booked through the cruise lines. If you booked your excursions third party, Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is ultimately your responsibility to reach out to those providers and make the necessary changes. Now, depending on which cruise line you're on, you may have an opportunity to access Wi-Fi services for free, make phone calls for free. It's all going to depend on your cruise line. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to the cruise line or speak to guest services once on board the ship. Now, this year's hurricane season is predicted to be a fairly heavy one. So this is really just the beginning of the possible number of itinerary changes we could see over the next several months. And just to reiterate it one more time, first and foremost, safety is number one. The cruise lines will always put safety first. You are chosen to sail during hurricane season. Have a little patience. Have a little understanding. Don't let an itinerary change over weather just make you feel like your entire cruise is ruined. Remember, at the end of the day, you're still on vacation, you're still on a cruise, and you're still having an opportunity to have a really good time. All right, and that is going to be our video for today. If you've enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you haven't done so yet, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It is free to do so. It helps our channel grow. Let you know anytime we put out a new video. Hope everyone out there is having a really great day, and like always, we will see you out on the high seas.